How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be building and testing out my eBay straight out of China Sandblaster. So let's roll that intro and get into it. Alright guys, so before I get started with this unboxing, I just want to remind you guys to hit that subscribe button below. We got a lot of content with my H22 Turbo Civic build going on, and we have a lot of other Honda stuff. We got a CRX that we do dirt racing with. We got a budget show car build in the works, and also some JDM Sylvia stuff. So if you're into that kind of stuff, definitely consider subscribing. Now with that out of the way, let's get to work. Alright, so let's start by opening up the box. We'll see what we got here, get all the components in order, and then figure out how this goes together. Alright guys, so I got all the parts laid out, and so this obviously is the tank. This is a 10-gallon tank, and these are the rest of the parts. So this is the hood, or they're calling it the hood. It's like a face mask. I don't know if I would trust this. It's made out of very, very thin material, and I have my own face mask that I'm going to be using instead of this, because I don't know how well this would actually protect someone. This is the foot. We got the handles. I believe the wheels attached to this as well. We got a pressure gauge, all the hardware, some extra nozzles, Teflon tape. This is the hose and the nozzle, and the wheels and instructions. So next step is going to be putting this thing all together. So now I'm going to check out the instructions and then see if we can get this thing built. So steps 1, 2, 3, and 4 all look like they're completed already because the tank comes with all this stuff attached. Turn the page and we jump straight to step 7, which shows how to install the handles, the wheels, and the foot. But interestingly enough, if we switch back to step 4, it already shows the foot and the wheels installed. So I think we got to go about this backwards. I'm going to start at the back and work my way to the front. So I'm going to start by trying to figure out how all this goes together. Shouldn't be too difficult. It looks pretty straightforward. So first thing I want to do is install the handles. To me, that seems like the best place to start. So we use a bolt and a washer and a nut. So in looking at my hardware here, I got a bolt, I got a nut, and I got these washers that are way too big. That's not gonna work. So I guess I don't have washers, so I'm just gonna use these. These washers are actually meant for the wheels, I believe. If we look here, it shows a washer here and a washer here. So I'm assuming that's what those are for. I don't have any washers the right size. All right, handles are on loosely. As you can see, they do not line up very well. This hole does not line up with this one at all, and I gotta shove an axle through there. So we'll see how that goes yet. But yeah, it's basically one bolt with a Phillips head on it and a 10 mil nut. So I just loosely have them on there for now. Next step is going to be sticking the axle through here if I can. Make sure I get the washers in place because it shows on here we want a washer on either side of the wheel, and then they get held on with a cotter pin. So I'm going to try lining this up and see how it goes. All right, axle is in. Wasn't too bad to get these to line up because of how loose everything is. But I guess once we tighten everything up, we'll see what happens. But yeah, we got 2 holes on each side for the cotter pins to go into. So I guess what I'm gonna do is put a cotter pin in the inside one here and the inside one here. Then we'll wanna slip the washer on, then wheels, then washer, then another cotter pin. So I'm gonna take care of that, see how it goes. All right, and just like that, we have wheels. So this actually lined up pretty good. Cotter pins are in there, washers are in place, and I've tightened up all 4 of these bolts now. So handles still don't line up very well, but I mean, that doesn't make too big of a difference because they will still serve their purpose. So I think the next step is to attach the foot on the front. So I think what we have to do is flip this around. This will just slide into place, and then there's one more cotter pin that holds that on. Simple enough. So now the foot is on. It was as simple as sliding the foot into place and then inserting the cotter pin and then bending the tabs over. So easy enough. We're just about ready to flip this thing up on end, but I think first thing we want to do is put the hose on. So from what I can tell, it's as simple as sliding the hose over the barb fitting and then using the supplied hose clamp to tighten it up. So we'll do that next. And now the hose is on. Hose clamp is nice and tight. I just used a 7mm socket to get that thing tight. It's a lot easier than trying to use the Phillips head because you can get a lot more torque on it. So that's done. I think I'm going to flip it up on end, and I think the last thing is putting the pressure gauge on. Here we go, guys. We got the Sandblaster standing up. Actually looks pretty good considering what it is. So last step is going to be installing the pressure gauge, which looks like it just screws into here. They've already put Teflon tape on it, so I think it's just a matter of turning it in. This is a 14mm, I believe, so then we can use a wrench on that and get it good and tight. And then we should be good to hook up some air to it. Alright guys, so pressure gauge is on, it's nice and tight. And something I noticed is it did not come with an air fitting, so I had to install my own, just use the Teflon tape that was supplied. And while I was putting this on, I kind of noticed that on all these fittings, I don't really see any residual Teflon tape under here or up here. So now I'm kind of wondering if all these fittings are gonna leak, and then I'm gonna have to take everything apart and thread seal it. So only way to find out is by hooking up some air to it now and seeing what happens. Oh, and by the way, guys, don't forget to wear eye protection when you're doing this because you never know when something might blow up. All right, so according to this, maximum pressure should not exceed 125 PSI. In the manual, it says a maximum working pressure of 110 PSI. So I have my regulator on my compressor set to 100, so that feels like a safe number to me. So I'm just gonna hook this up and see what happens here. I have all the valves turned off. So there's 1, 2, 3, and 4 different valves. All are switched off right now. So once I hook up the air, I'm gonna turn on one at a time in sequence, and we'll see if there's any leaks. Okay, so I've got my air line hooked up. And so far the gauge is reading 0, that's good. I got no leaks here. So I'm gonna turn this valve on. All right, so now the air pressure has stopped. Looks like it's equalized. I don't have my tank plugged in right now because this is just a pressure test. So we're at about 60 PSI right now on the gauge. No leaks so far, so that's good. So I'm gonna move on to the next valve here. And then this valve opens the line that runs from here to the bottom down there. So we'll give this one a try, we'll see what happens. Okay, now that line is full of air. So far so good, I'm not hearing any leaks. So now this is the sandblasting line, should be full of air. So now if I open this valve, we should have air pressure coming out of here. So I'm gonna give it a try. I'm just gonna open it really slow. Yeah, there we go. That's awesome. Okay, so we got no leaks, that's good. Okay, so now that we've established that there's no leaks, I'm going to shut the main air supply off. And I'm gonna let all the air out of the tank, and then this way I can fill it up with some blast media, and then we can do a quick test with that. Alright guys, well I apologize for the background noise, but once again my neighbor has decided to cut his grass when I'm recording. But I'm to the point now where I want to test out the blast media in the Sandblaster. So this is just regular blasting sand, and basically what you do is you open up the top and then you dump the media in here. I can see here in the instruction book, it was supposed to come with a funnel. Everything else pictured is here, but no funnel. So I'm gonna have to make do with one of my own. So I'm just gonna be using this fuel tank funnel that I have modified slightly. So I cut a bit of the end off to make it a bit bigger. The sand should flow through here just fine and fits pretty nicely in there. So I'm gonna use that. So I'm gonna put on my respirator, some safety glasses, and then we'll dump some of the sand in here. They recommend filling the tank about 3/4 of the way full, but I'm only going to be doing a small test right now. And there's actually a lot of moisture in the air right now. They're calling for rain all week. So I don't want all of a sudden to get a bunch of moisture in the tank and then it could make the sand clump. So I'm just going to put a bit in here for the test to see how it works. And then we'll go from there. So this stuff makes a lot of dust and it can be really bad for you. So always make sure you're wearing a proper respirator and safety glasses. When you're actually blasting, you gotta wear a face mask as well. So a lot of protective equipment is needed when using this stuff, but let's get the tank filled a little bit and see how it works. Alright guys, so I got the tank hooked up and pressure set at about 90 psi. Hopper's got some blast media in it, so I think we're ready to start blasting. So I'm gonna try blasting some of this red paint off of my valve cover here. So yeah, I'm gonna get suited up and then we'll get to blasting. Alright guys, so I may look a little ridiculous here, but I'm taking as many precautions as I can to stay safe. So I got my respirator, safety glasses, face shield, I got some long sleeves, leather gloves, and I got my hood up. So that's about as much protection as I can give myself with what I have. So I'm going to get to blasting and we'll see how this thing works. Alright guys, so I'm going to try that again. So got a little bit of blasting done here, but the hopper ran out of blast media already, so that's all I was able to do. So I think what the problem was, as you can see there's a valve on the bottom here. I had this valve wide open, and I think this controls the amount of media that goes through the hose. So having it wide open like that, you could see when I first started it was just dumping sand out of it as opposed to actually spraying it. And also I didn't really have the air valve open all the way either. So it was probably a combination of two things, not having enough air pressure and having way too much blast media. So I'm gonna try it a bit differently this time. I'm gonna open this valve maybe about halfway this time, and then I'm gonna have the valve on the end of the nozzle open all the way from the start, and hopefully we can get a good stream of sand going so it's not just dumping out of the end of the hose. So we'll give that a try now and see how it goes. Alright guys, well, took a lot longer than expected, but the valve cover is finally sandblasted. It turned out pretty clean. I am pretty happy with it. Probably could do a little bit more in some areas. It looks a little blotchy, or some areas look like they're blasted more than others. So it's a little inconsistent looking, but I'm happy with it. I still have to do a finishing sand on it and do a bit more work on it anyway. So I'm happy with the state of this. Now, there was a lot of trial and error involved in trying to get this thing set properly, so it ended up taking a lot longer than I thought it would. And then I also had a problem with my compressor. The compressor could not keep up, and I kept having to wait for the compressor to fill up again. And there was also a big moisture problem. So before I started, I made sure that the compressor was dry. There was no water left in it. I had it emptied. And then I also have the water separator hooked up here. But I was still having problems with moisture getting inside. So I ended up having to take everything apart and found that there was a bunch of wet sand in the bottom of it. So then what I had to do is take this all apart and take the hose off. And then I had to blow out the line, get everything cleaned up. and dump all the sand out of it, which meant I had to take the cap off the top, turn it upside down and get all the sand out of it, and then kind of make sure all the moisture was out of there before I could proceed. Another problem I had, as you can see, there is a hole in here. So basically wherever there is a fitting going into the tank, there's a hole drilled there. So I guess from the manufacturer, there was a lot of metal shavings left over from that. And I ended up having a lot of big chunks of metal getting stuck in the hose. So I kept having to turn everything off, take the hose off, blow it out, and unclog it. I would have to take the tip off because oftentimes there would be chunks of metal inside there. So it took quite a while to get all the metal shavings and chunks of metal out of this tank before it became usable. But after I got all that figured out and the tank cleaned up, it ended up working pretty good. Only problem was that the compressor couldn't keep up. So I think what I'm gonna have to do in the future is get a bigger compressor with a better motor on it that can keep up. That way I can have a continuous stream of air and sand coming out. I'll get less moisture that way, and if the sand is continually moving, then I'll have less likely chance of the tip getting clogged up. But overall, I am pretty happy with the Sandblaster considering what I paid. It was about 360 bucks Canadian after shipping and conversion and duty charges and all that extra lovely stuff that it takes to get stuff here from the US. In US dollars, I think that was 270 bucks. So for what I got, that's not a bad price. I think all I have to do is figure out the compressor issue and the moisture issue, and then we should be good to go. Now, the main reason I got the Sandblaster was so I can finish my wheel wells and my engine bay. So basically what I need to use it for is to get all this paint stripped out of here. I want it down to bare metal, and then that way I can get some fresh primer on there, fresh seam seal, get a fresh coat of paint in there, and it's gonna be looking real nice. But before I do that, I wanna make sure that I get everything dialed in on the Sandblaster, because if I have too much moisture in the sand and I'm blasting steel, I could risk getting flash rusting. And after all the work I put into this, I do not wanna deal with rust. But yeah, guys, that's gonna end the video here. If you like the video, definitely give me a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments, drop a comment below. We'd love to hear feedback from you guys. And if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you do so. We got lots of content coming out with my Civic. We got a CRX that we're dirt racing, and that season's coming up very soon, so we're looking forward to that. We got some JDM S14 Sylvia content, so definitely stay tuned. We'll see you next time.